Good morning. I'm Daryl Brugink, Executive Editor with No-Till Farmer, and I'd like to welcome you to this morning's webinar where we're going to delve into cover crop mixes. And more specifically, we want to look at how you might select a proper mix of species that produces the results you desire from a cover crop cocktail. Today's No-Till Farmer webinar is sponsored by Saddle Butte Ag. They're the producers of BioTill cover crop seeds. We want to thank Don Worth, Ron Altoff, and all the folks at Saddle Butte Ag for making today's webinar possible. We also want to thank our presenter, Jamie Scott. He's a no-tiller from Pierceton, Indiana, and he'll be sharing his latest experiences working with blends of cover crops on his farm just west of Fort Wayne, Indiana. So with that said, we want to thank you again for joining us, and we're going to turn the controls over to Jamie Scott. Good morning, Jamie. We're pleased you could lead our webinar, and sure hope you're doing well.
Morning, Daryl. Thanks a lot.
You bet. Thank you, Jamie.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started here. To just take an hour to go through cover crop mixes is, I'm not sure if it's too long or not long enough. Depending on knowledge in that, it varies from time to time. I think we know things, and then the next day I think we've got a lot to learn. So I think I heard it best here just this weekend. One guy said we're really all still in first grade. It's just a few of us have been to school a few more days than the others. So I'll go through what we have learned and some of the problems that we've come up against and hopefully tell you what's going on right now. Pretty sure that if this webinar gets recorded and watched a year or two down the road, some of this or all of this probably could be changed by that point in time. A little bit about our farming operation to get started. We are at Pierceton, Indiana. The red dot there on the map shows where we're at, and I always think this is a really important slide. If you're in the Dakotas, if you're in the far south, what we're doing here is probably going to be a similar concept, but the prescriptions are really going to be different. I know when we were learning about mixes, it was tough for us to hear about the Dakota folks and the things they've done and then bring those exact mixes to our area and make them work. So as I go through here, keep in mind, where we're located. We do get lake effect snow. That helps us at times. But this is pretty important to know where we're at in the world. Also, it is not just myself that farms. This is our family here. My dad and mom. We farm 2,000 acres of corn, beans, wheat, and alfalfa. We are 100% no-till and 100% cover crops on our farm. But I always like to recognize them. As my dad says, I'm kind of the one out and telling people what we're doing, and he's kind of the one that gets left behind to do the work. So definitely need to recognize them for everything they do and that we all do at the farm there. As far as cocktail mixes go, I kind of want to start where we did. We've been back into cover crops on our farm for 10 years now, and before that we used them on and off, not 100% of our acres, where the last 10 years we've been 100%, but a lot of learning to do, especially when we start putting these multi-species mixes together. What works well together, what doesn't, how they take shade or take cold temperatures or wet or dry soils. So I kind of wanted to start where we did from the beginning, and look at all the possibility of cover crops, and whether that be grasses, broadleafs, legumes, brassicas, warm season, cool season, and what we have available to us. One of the things we've done over the last 10 years is put in several plots on our farm. Last year we had probably close to 100 different mixes and single species that were on our farm. We had 60 showcased right here at our shop, but had several others throughout that were on larger scale so that we actually could take them to yield and learn about the single species as well as the mixes. I always tell everyone that the list is long for cover crops, for after wheat and those kind of things. This next slide here actually kind of narrows it down to where, in our area, after just corn and beans, we don't have as many of those to use as we get into a late fall. So timing wise is critical on all cover crops, but especially when we get into mixes. You get into the legumes to get them to produce nitrogen, the brassicas to get going. We lose a lot of options because of our cropping conditions here in the Midwest of normally corn bean rotation. You know, I'll admit that I think a couple 3 years ago, I thought the cocktail mix deal was a little bit of a competition. If I had a 8-way mix, someone else needed a 9-way mix, and the next guy had a 10-way, then 11, 12. It was a little bit of a competition that the way for me to beat you was to have one more species in my mix. Luckily, by having the single species plots on our farm and looking at all of them, just like looking at this slide, what's above ground and below ground are so much different between all of those species. The benefit to these cocktail mixes is biodiversity and getting more root structures, more beneficial things on our farm as often as we can. We have went to wheat back in the rotation. We're currently trying to get to a third, and a third, so that a third of our acres gets this diverse cover crop mix every year. On our farm, in a 3-year rotation, we're going to have 20 different species of warm season, cool season, different things that hit our soil. That looks like very beneficial practice to us. It is hard to imagine that in a 3 months window of raising these diverse cocktail mixes, how fast and how much it can change the soil, just that 3-month window of having those mixes on there. Like I said, we've looked at a lot of single species plots. This is just one of our plots that were here at the farm. As you can see in the foreground, here in the front, we had, just like after wheat simulated or after an early bean harvest, actually in the back of the photo you can see where we then took those cover crops and seeded them into standing crop. They were also into the cornfield behind that, so that we got shade tolerance. We tried to learn as fast and as much as we could about these species. The last few years, we've then taken those single species and tried to put them all in mixes. And it is really tough. There's a lot of 2-3-way mixes out there that are really good, and we'll go through those here in a minute. When you start getting multi-species mixes, it gets very confusing, and unfortunately there's not enough data as to how many pounds of each to put in, what the shade tolerance does, and how they work together. So like I said, the last few years we've tried to do these multi-species mixes of everyone's that's out there. I mean, when I hear someone tell a mix, I write it down, we bring it home, and we try it on our own farm. You know, backing up a little bit on those single species, I mean, we have grasses, and we're a big fan of the annual ryegrass. There's many more to use here. We kind of broke it down in one of my meetings is why to even use grasses. And I think this is the first building block of all cover crops, and definitely the mixes is grasses. To build organic matter, to sequester nutrients, the things that they do are the most beneficial in our mind on our farm to hold soil. If you're going to pick a single species, this is one of them that is really going to do things for us. Just some pictures of those, easy to establish in a lot of crops. The shading effect is not a problem. Easy stand establishment over a broad spectrum of moisture scales. to where easy to get into things, and then when we start putting them in mixes, they still work very well. One of the things I like about the grasses is here's a picture of this is where one of the radish tubulars went down in the soil. Of course, it deteriorated over winter and returned nutrients back to us. The grass was there to help scavenge them, didn't let them leach away, and continue to help us recycle them. So I kind of feel where the grasses are the main starting point of my single species and mixes that we're using. Of course, the next thing we always look to is legumes. We have high hopes that they'll always produce a bunch of nitrogen for us, um, which is sometimes tough. But we like to get those in there. Sometimes they don't do anything more in the mix other than help the grass. So crimson clover, I've got some pictures here where not much nitrogen production out of them, but really made the whole system work better. This is what we're after, always looking for that nitrogen production. This is crimson clover, Austrian winter peas, and this one here that, if we give them enough time, this is possible. But the more we study these single species, the more that we feel that even if we don't get the nitrogen out of the legumes, we're still getting benefits out of biodiversity. We're helping the other species that are in the mixes. This is Cahaba vetch here, and again, outstanding nitrogen production. It's just timing on whether we can get those in the mixes or not. Brassicas, that's kind of the next species, and I think they get talked about as much as anyone. And as we go through here and look at some of the mixes, I'll kind of show you where I think they're overused. The first thing that I see in most everyone's mix that they tell me about is we have too many pounds of brassicas. My mixes, I will never use over 2 pounds of brassica at any time. And actually, in our current mix that we're seeding this year, we went down to just a little over a pound of brassicas, just for the fact that they crowd everything out. Some of them are a lot of seeds per pound. We want the other things to take over and do good. Of course, the radish, everyone likes that. Most people laugh at this picture because there is no smile on my face. I don't get as excited about these as others. I really look to the brassicas as if we need a biofumigant or something to take care of a pest problem, or soybean cyst nematode, or different nematodes, that we would select a brassica depending on its strength to take some of those out, more than just holding up a trophy radish and saying that we're excited about that. We want the benefits of what's in the soil as well. Unfortunately, some of these mixes, these are radishes as well, and the later we drill them, we just don't get the good out of some of them. I think I've got some pictures here later on showing that the sooner we can get mixes in, the better off we are, the more benefits we're going to get out of them. Turnips, we've got some of those in our mix. Not as good of breaking up compaction and things like that. We put them more in for wildlife benefit. But again, just wanted to show some of the different brassicas we're using. This is the one that we're using a lot of in all mixes, not only our diverse one, but on corn and soybean acres, and that's rapeseed. That we really like what we see out of it, and like the benefits we get for suppressing some of the nematodes and things like that as well. Real quick, last year, these were just a few of the mixes that we used on multiple acres on our farm. So not just looked at trials. I mean, these actually were whole fields or several fields. One of our main ones is definitely still ryegrass and crimson clover, a grass and a legume. They work very well together. We've kind of stepped back a little bit as clover price climbs up or moves around, and went to a ryegrass rapeseed mix for a few years to get some benefit. The only disadvantage there is we really have to watch our corn chemicals. Sometimes the residual corn chemical will take out the rapeseed or thin the stands of us to where we're not getting the benefit or our money out of that. Of course, our main goal would be to get to a grass, legume, or a brassica, all three in there, and the ryegrass, crimson clover, and radish or rapeseed would do that. That's something that we continue to push on multiple corn and bean acres to see which one of those grass, legume, and brassicas we can get by with here in northern Indiana. The next mix is ryegrass, crimson clover, cahaba vetch, radish, and rapeseed. That was the second most used mix on our farm after wheat. We've got a couple different legumes, a couple different brassicas in there. We'll see what the yield results are this fall, but the corn looks really good behind that mix and is a little more cost effective than our 13-way or 15-way mix that we're currently using. Cost on that, I think we were in the high 20s or low $30 range. Where this cocktail mix, we are spending $50 for seed cost on some of that. The Austrian winter pea, sun hemp, vetch, radish, and oats mix. I've got some pictures of that later. Just playing with some different things, trying to get some other mixes that again are cost effective and get the same results with maybe not spending $50 on every acre like our 13-way cocktail mix there. When we look to mixes, one of the first things and probably the easiest one that we found is definitely oats and radish. It's not my favorite, but if you want to start out in diversity and look to things that, we see that oats and radish is one that fits a lot of farms, whether it be into the standing crop, whether it be after wheat. It's just a good mix. They work very well together and produce very good results. I don't think we could find a cocktail mix on our farm that would probably attract more earthworms than say this mix right here. So very beneficial to start out with, just not as diverse as I would like, and does not take care of some of the compaction that I would like either. Of course, it's a planned winter kill. Some people like that. So that's why oats and radish is probably talked about as one of the most used starter mixes. Some of the other simple mixes that we've used is just that ryegrass, crimson clover, grass legume, and works very well together. This slide here, as you can see this red flag in the middle of the screen, the only difference between the right half of the screen and the left half is that the left half had crimson clover in it. It is the same rate of product. It's just that with crimson clover added to the ryegrass, I always explain it that we add 1 and 1, and somehow instead of getting 2, we end up with 5. There's a synergism. There's things that go on. This is just one of those mixes that work really well together. So I really like to, when we see Daniel ryegrass, put the crimson clover with it. Of course, there are those places that do not like Daniel ryegrass. So we keep it very simple. This is a crimson clover radish mix. And again, a legume and a brassica work very well together. This being crimson clover and radish. This one here being Austrian winter peas and radish. So that legume seems to feed the brassica, and the brassica seems to kind of take the nitrogen away from it, and they keep working together to produce a very good end result. Again, more than likely, after wheat type program, most of it is going to winter kill. Very easy to plant into, deal with the next spring. You can kind of simulate kind of a bio strip till here a nice area to plant into. Works really well. This is a picture where, going from two-way mixes into three-way mixes, already we started to get complicated. This was early on, and again, like I said, most everyone overuses the brassicas. I forget exactly what the rate of radish was in this ryegrass crimson clover radish mix. It was somewhere in the range of 4 pounds per acre. And as you can see, that was a very thick stand of radish, and it crowded out a lot of the crimson clover and ryegrass that was in there. Um, on our farm and in our mixes that we move to people, we will not go over 2 pounds of radish. This is our mix here. A lot better grass. There's actually a lot of crimson clover in there that's hard to see. And then still a really good amount of radishes. So this was seeded at 10 pounds of ryegrass, 4 to 5 pounds of crimson clover, and then 2 pounds of radish on top of it. We talked about timing before, and still, even on these simple 2 and 3-way mixes, timing is very critical. This is that same 3-way mix of ryegrass, crimson clover, radish. It is really not something that we're going to be able to utilize after bean harvest. This field of beans was taken off very early in September, seeded as soon as we could, and by late fall, early winter, this was the results. Just probably did not get our money's worth out of that mix to put the expensive brassica in there. Probably an all grass or grass crimson clover would have done us just fine at that point in time. Just wanted to show a couple quick pictures here of some of the things we've seen in test plots and when we do different mixes. Again, trying to split the screen here down the middle. The right half over here was just ryegrass and crimson clover. The left half was ryegrass, crimson clover, and radishes put together. You can see how much thicker the grass and clover are on your right, whereas the left side, the brassica kind of suppressed and crowded out some of those things. That can be a good thing if you do not want to plant into this thicker stand of cover crop, then we can go with a few more brassicas. But if you want the grass and legume there, we have to be very careful with those rates of brassica again. They do thin the stands. And this next picture showing the same thing. This was a field where one of the guys took a haybine, went across here at an angle, just cut a swath down and back, and baled that off as haylage. And what we saw the next spring was that it was a much thicker stand of clover, much thicker stand of ryegrass where he had done that. Actually, where the 3-way mix was left out in the field, there was very little crimson clover in the springtime. It seemed to affect the winter hardiness or how that plant works just by having the 3-way or the third species in that mix. So not always is getting complicated the best thing. Just like they're showing that radishes may have hurt the overall success of that cover crop. Here is another case where tried to get creative. We went baby steps for a while and then jumped into it. Tried to get a grass being cereal rye, a legume being crimson clover, and a brassica being turnips. The plan was that turnips should winter kill or most of them. If not, knock them back to where the corn would be planted right in this row and terminate it just before planting. The turnips actually overwintered. They all started to go towards seed. So here's a case where the best laid plans did not work. This field had to be terminated too early for the crimson clover to produce nitrogen or the grass to do its good because of the turnips in that mix. So something that we want to be careful with, that we're not seeding brassicas too early, or that we're selecting something that is going to stop us from getting the end result that we want. Not only brassicas, it could be a warm season grass, or something like buckwheat that will definitely produce viable seed. When we're going through and selecting mixes, we just need to keep that in mind. Real quick, I just wanted to reference, this is data from Beck's Seed Corn here in Atlanta, Indiana, and really appreciate the work that they've done on some of their trials. Them as well as others are looking at mixes, different cover crops. And, if you look at this sheet here, I'll try to expand it so it's a little more visible. The best thing on here, the most profitable thing to do was a single species. It was annual ryegrass. Their data has been 2 years, and it's been annual ryegrass both years. Actually, some of these other mixes had annual ryegrass in it. Once we started adding things to it, we decreased the profit, and we sometimes decreased the yield. So again, I just wanted to point out that we're all gung-ho on mixes, and there's a lot of good things there. But like I said at the beginning, we're really all still in first grade. We're learning to see what works well together, what benefit each other, and what we can really get a good return on our investment from. Now, on our own farm, after going back to wheat in the rotation, and really the reason to put that wheat in there was to get that biodiversity again, to get different species. Our own acres are getting a grass legume, a grass brassica, or just a grass after corn and beans. We just didn't feel like that was enough. So we've tried these cocktail mixes on several small plots, and then now in the last few years have been taking them to those wheat fields and trying to learn from them. This is just one of the pictures of our cocktail mix, and as you can see, very diverse, a lot of flowering species in there. Pretty much everything I selected, if I could go with one that had a flower on it versus not, I would pick that, just because of attracting the beneficials to our farm. And we had people stopping by, taking pictures of all the bees, butterflies, all the beneficial insects that were out in these fields last year. Also had landowners stopping by saying, when are you going to do this on my farm? This is really what needs to be done, and just seeing the benefits out of it already. This was our mix last year, the 13 species, and as you can see, we had a fair amount of legumes. Our goal is to go to corn after this. When we look at that mix, a bulk of the cost is in the legumes. We can pull some of those back out and cheapen this up, but if we're going to go to corn, we wanted to kind of produce our own nitrogen, and get some benefits out of that. We did go with some warm season, cool season of different things to try to benefit a little bit, but it is tough. You'll see on this 13-way mix where crimson clover is one of our species, and when we get to the 15-way mix that we're using this year, we have removed crimson clover from some of those acres. It's a great species, just does not take the shade in these diverse mixes like we would like. So we either pull it down on the amount we're using or pull it out of the mixes. I did put the cost down here. I know that scares a lot of people. I'll be honest, it scared my dad when we first designed this. He asked me, he said, are we spending $20 an acre on this mix? And I told him no. He said, are we spending $30 an acre on this mix? And again, I had to tell him no, and I said, we really have to add those two together. And I did not get fired at that point in time, but I do think it was close. He did not like that we were spending $54 an acre for seed cost. But after I sat down with a calculator with him and we went through how much nitrogen we could produce, how many of the benefits we could get out of it, and then going through some seasons of it, he would be the first to admit today that he does not want to do anything but this cocktail mix. It's the only thing he wants to plant corn into, and every time I try to remove one of those species out of there, he tells me that I cannot. So even though that initial cost scared him away, after seeing the results, after seeing the benefits of it, well worth that. Hate to just focus on that to start with. This is our 15-way mix. This is currently what we're using this year on our wheat acres. We're trying to get that all drilled currently as fast as we can. My results show me that the sooner we can get this in, the better. We're producing more nitrogen. We're getting more benefits out of it. Last year, seeding just 2 weeks apart on this mix, the pre-side dress nitrate test was double from a timely planting to that 2 weeks later. So it really shows how much more nitrogen we got, and to get our $54 an acre or more back out of it, we really want to get these mixes in as soon as possible. This is something that we're not going to be able to use after corn beans. It really needs to be in here in our area by the 1st of August to get good benefits. You can see some of the things we added this year were Berseem clover, and then down here under the broadleafs we added the flax. So just looking at some other species, things that we saw in our single plots last year and the year before that we really liked and we wanted to get into these mixes. Just some pictures of the cocktail mix in the field again, and you can see a very even stand of these different species. We'll talk about mixing and how to do that a little bit later, but just some pictures at different times of what our farm looked like. This was late summer, early fall. This was after killing frost. This was in the wintertime. Watching that die down, a lot of people drove by and said, are you going to bush hog that? Are you going to plow that under? How are you going to take care of all that residue that's on top of the ground? You'll never plant into that. So it was interesting to let them watch and see these pictures develop too. Because again, I mean, it's not just about growing cover crops, it's about improving our whole system and making it work. Here we are planting into that in the springtime. Still a lot of residue on top. Like I said earlier, my dad does not want to plant into anything but this. Very mellow soil. It took the old clay hills and turned them into something other than the old clay hills where you struggled to get corn in or beans in at the right depth. Just really works well. Here we are side dressing the edge of that. Again, you can still see lots of residue. Almost looks like old corn rows here, but that's still just left over from sorghum, sudan, sunflowers, and some of that stuff in there. The crops, of course, we've had a good growing season, but the crops have never looked better in these fields. Very even from edge to edge. We've always had varying soil types that you get in a cool wet spell or a dry spell that have stressed. This year, even though we have other fields that have had some unevenness, these fields are all very even crops from edge to edge with these cocktail mixes. Again, kind of just showing pictures along the way. This was taken back in June time frame. Of course, crops look very good in that field, like I said. If I was to walk out in that field today and take another picture, it is almost down to bare soil. As much residue as we started out with, we've attracted enough beneficials through the system that it is using it, recycling it for us. And again, had a guy here a couple weeks ago from Australia, and he actually thought we had tilled that field. It looked at barren places out there. This is the a picture showing two different mixes. The one to the right is the five-way radish, ryegrass, cahaba vetch, clover uh, type mix. The what I wanted to show is to the left here, and if you look, this is the same 13-way mix seeded 2 weeks later. You don't see any sunflowers out. The sun hemp did not bloom. Just not the production out of this like back to where we seeded it on time. So again, just wanted to kind of hit home that we really need to get these cocktail mix seeded as fast as possible to get the benefits out of them. You know, when it comes to cocktail mixes, there's a lot of ways to seed cover crops, and we're a big fan of getting it on with an airplane high boy sprayer, getting it out there early. Unfortunately, when you have that many different seeds, that many different things out there, we're pretty much going to be down to a drill after wheat time frame. And I'll hop ahead one picture here and really show you why. I mean, with the small seeds, the large seeds that are in there, you know, it's going to be tough to get those evenly distributed in a field really any way other than a drill. I have phone calls every week on, can we spread that with a fertilizer spreader and just lightly work it in? I would not recommend that when we're looking at $50-some an acre seed cost. Really ought to take the time and drill these in and get them where we need them. You know, I want to talk a little bit about selecting these cover crops and tools that are out there. This is actually from Green Cover's website, and you know, NRCS has a selection tool. There are some out there. I'm going to be honest, there's not any one that I found that I really like. They all kind of lack something, and then the biggest reason they lack things is we don't have enough information. Was with Barry Fisher here from Indiana the last few days, and we talked a lot about trying to come up with what is the biomass of all of these species in single species and in mixes so that we can make a better selection tool. I did go on their website and look at this, and part of the reason I wanted to show this today was the seed count per acre. I hear a lot of things when I'm out at talks and kind of sway my decision, that everyone says we don't need very many seeds per acre, we don't need many seeds per square foot. When I come up with my mix based on how I want it, not developing it based on cost, developing it based on benefits and what I want, I seem to get this seed count pretty high. So I know Ron Altoff there at Saddle Butte and I had a lot of discussions. We looked just at annual ryegrass. We seeded at 15 pounds. We get about 44 seeds per square foot. We looked at medium red clover. I think we said there's like 50 seeds per square foot if we go with a recommended rate of that. My cocktail mix, what I'm doing is about 40, anywhere from 39 to 40 seeds per square foot normally of what we're doing. So it seems very dense. Again, I think when you look back to the map of where we're located, the rainfall that we get, that's why we've selected that many plants. We can actually raise them, get benefits out of them, and make a good return on our investment. Again, on the seed size, you know, there's a lot of different things in there. The problem with these mixes are a lot of the seeds come from different parts of the country, different areas. It's hard to get a pre-mix bought that we all want. Until we get down and develop these one or two of the cocktail mixes, it's going to be tough to put these together. What I wanted to say is that make sure you plan ahead. If you're going to have these elaborate mixes, it's going to take a month or more lead time to get seeds, get them rounded up, and get them to your farm to where you can use them. We still have guys calling every day saying, hey, do you have any of that left? And we have to tell them no at times because it's just too hard to get that stuff in and get it organized. Also, mixing it can be a problem. To get that much in, and when you're trying to round it all up, it can be tough to keep it to where it doesn't sort out. The small seed go one way, large seed another. Um, what we've done is very simple. I'm not saying it's very high tech. We have got 2 or 3 pro boxes around that seed corn or seed beans come in. We dump all of our seeds in a pro box, set it on top of another one. We open the gate about 1 inch on bottom. We let it filter through 2 to 3 times before we then put that in a drill. And the results are that it's mixed this good by doing that. Make sure you put the proper inoculants on there when you're doing that. And we have had no problem. Last year we put 25 acres in the drill at a time. This year we're actually filling the drill up, having no problem with that seed sorting out, being small, large, left, or going out at the same time. One of the other things I wanted to talk about real quick is if you're going to seed these mixes, make sure you prep the field for them. One of the things we're doing currently is if we have volunteer wheat possibly or some weeds growing, we're just going through with a quart of glyphosate, cleaning that field up very fast. This is a test plot that I drilled. This is from DeKalb County, Indiana. When we drilled this test plot, we had a strong discussion. I don't know that it was an argument, but a strong discussion about whether we should spray this plot with glyphosate. So what we did was we drilled this plot all the way through, and then they cleaned up half of the plot with glyphosate on the left. The right half, they did not spray glyphosate on. As you can see, we used the same amount of seed on the right side as we did the left, but the weeds took it over on the right. So make sure you give these cocktail mixes a fair chance. Give them a clean start, and they're going to do good things for you. If you have some weed pressure, some things going on, they're not going to perform the same as if you help them out. So just wanted to put that in there. We get that question a lot on should we clean the field up, should we let it go, what should be done there. Talked a lot about mixes after wheat there, and we are trying to diversify mixes into corn or beans. Again, the most complicated we're seeming to be able to get is to a grass, brassica, and a legume. This is a picture of ryegrass, crimson clover, and radishes, all flown on standing corn. As you can see, the corn is still green, and we can find all 3 species in that picture. So those 3 are working fairly well. Not going to get the same results as putting wheat in the rotation, but we still can get diversity out there with corn or beans in the rotation. On occasion, with putting them into corn or beans, just wanted to show this is a turnip that we had left over from the year before. So sometimes by flying those brassicas on into standing crop, this happens. Also, this is the picture of radishes here that did not grow the year in corn, grew the year in beans. Not very many, but again, it is a possibility to show a negative of those mixes that we just want to be careful with. At the end of every season, pretty much every bag of seed that I have left, we dump in a super sack and mix up, and I take it to my pilot, and we fly it on. So, I mean, we've tried to fly or broadcast just about anything possible. When we look at this photo here, I can find Phacelia, I can find radishes, ryegrass, turnips, clover, a lot of things, but still not getting the results out of much of that diverse species in corn or beans. We do get a little growth, as you can see out of some of these, just not enough time on doing that. So the best money spent is if you want to get to these cocktail mixes and diversity on your farm, use them after a specialty crop, use them after wheat, corn or beans. I would still keep it simple with maybe up to a three-way mix at most, and that would be it. Um, Real quick, I'm going to run through some pictures here of things we've seen from not only our mixes but others, and then hopefully have time for some questions here. Just going to flip through here, just showing the differences of some of the cocktail mixes that we've tried. This is just one of the plots that we had a year ago. This was one of the mixes that did very well. This was a 13-way mix here. Everything seemed to work well together and grow. Where when we look at the next mix here, this is one that was very strong in brassica. This had a lot of Ethiopian cabbage in it. When you look at that mix, there's really not much left there but the brassica. And again, just wanted to kind of hit home that be careful when we're developing mixes that we don't get too strong with those. As you can see, it crowded a lot of the other beneficial stuff out that we wanted. This another mix, and again, this is back to, I think, a 10-way mix, and very similar to the 13-way mix. A lot of diversity, a lot of things made it. Not as much brassica as the last one, and still very beneficial here. Just another mix, and again, I mean, this is why no company right now, or very few companies, have a complete mix, is because someone may want 2 pounds of something, the next one may want 3. We really don't have that dialed in at this time. I just was looking at all these different mixes just to see what everyone was doing. Here was a mix that was heavier in the grass, took some of the legumes out. It was a cheaper mix, but a little different look to it. Not something that I want to plant corn into. Probably could go beans into that and be fine. Again, a couple of these last mixes here were had the brassica in there, pretty strong. This one here actually was, I think, an 8-way mix again that turned out to be pretty good. Just a touch strong in brassica again. This is a before-after picture here now of, this is going to be the radish in, we put them in twin rows. Here you can see some radish rows, and then in between we had a heavy legume. The one thing that we saw we needed to do with this mix is that the legumes in there, if we really ought to put a grass with them to help crowd out some of the weeds. When we produce a lot of nitrogen and we don't have shading effect, this field had a lot of lamb's quarter, a lot of weeds come in by not having a complete shade of that field. And this is results of it. This is just after winter. What we did is we planted right next to this radish row, close in here to the legumes. But like I said, that mix looks very good. It just has some more weed pressure. Would have put some more oats with it to crowd that out. And I think this is my last photo, just showing where we had ryegrass, crimson clover, again on the left side of the screen, the 3-way mix on the right, and the same results multiple years with adding 3-way versus 2-way. Can be beneficial, can pull back some of the legumes. We had a lot less clover stand in this strip than we did in the left. So again, just be careful with those. If that's your intent, to be able to plant into it easier, then we can raise the brassica rate. If you want the benefits out of it and can plant into a little thicker mat, thin those down a little bit. I guess I do have one more photo, and that is our cocktail mix again that was out in the field, and had a lot of people look at this. Like I said, I think the first few minutes of this webinar, if we come back and look at this in say 2 years, 5 years, we're probably going to change this mix. We're probably going to laugh at something that was in here. We are still learning on these. We've got a long ways to go at learning the species, learning how they work together again. And with that, hopefully, I left a little bit of time. I was hoping to be able to answer some questions that we had while the webinar was going on.
Thank you very much, Jamie. We do have about a dozen questions that have been posed here. We'll see how many we can get through with our remaining time. Let me start here. You were just talking about flying on some of these species like the three-way and soybeans. What is your timing on when you're flying in, cover crop seed?
Again, it becomes complicated with a mix. If we look at just annual ryegrass on soybeans, we want to be when it's still kind of green leaves headed towards yellow. If you look at oats, cereal rye, wheat, we know that it's yellow leaf time. So that becomes the complication when we add different species together. Each one would like to be seeded at a different time. We have to kind of hit the happy medium. On soybeans, it's tougher. The one thing we're finding is that there's less moisture in the field. So if they're going to call for rain, get it on no matter what the leaf stage is. Get that moisture on it. It will grow and will be fine, even if it's green leaves, if we have that moisture.
Okay. I'm going to combine a couple of them here. What type of drill are you using to seed your mixes? What setting do you use to plant your mixes? And also, what kind of depth are you generally looking at when you're planting these multi-species mixes?
Those are all good questions, and that is something I forgot to mention as we go through. We have a John Deere 750 drill. Pretty much any drill we have used, Great Plains tie, even the Buffalo Truex drills from districts. I do have a lot of settings. The current setting that we're using on a 750 drill for those cocktail mixes is either notch 16 or notch 17. What we do is actually put seed in it and do calibrate it every year. As far as depth, again, you kind of got to hit a happy medium. There's cowpeas and Austrian winter peas and some of those that want to be deeper. There's some smaller seeded stuff that would almost rather be on top of the ground. For the most part, we're going about 3/4 of an inch to an inch deep. When you get multi-species together, they compensate for each other and are going to work really well. As long as you get them into moisture, you don't have to sink them 1.5 inches or 2 inches deep, and you really don't want them just a 1/2 inch deep on top. So,
okay. Could you use cereal rye and crimson clover in a two-way mix instead of, say, annual ryegrass?
yes, crimson clover and cereal rye would be a good one. The other one that we've used a lot that I didn't show pictures of is Austrian winter peas and cereal rye. Those seem to do really well together, and actually have seeded into them green with very good results on both of those. All of the legumes need a little more time to produce nitrogen, so we're finding out where we really have to let them go and almost plant into them to get the benefit out of those. But crimson clover, Austrian winter peas, great fit with cereal rye.
Okay. Do you find that all the brassicas are generally competitive in your cover crop seeding mixtures? Are there some that are less competitive than others?
Most all of them are competitive. They have so much top growth or leaf area to them. The reason that we backed down from 2 pounds to just a little over 1 pound total this year was that they wanted to crowd out some of the other stuff that we wanted to come on and grow, say Phacelia, the yellow blossom sweet clover, some of that stuff. When we select brassicas, the one thing we should really do is look at seeds per pound. To say that we're going to put a pound of turnips or a pound of rapeseed out there versus a pound of radish, That's a huge difference in amount of seeds per pound and amount of seeds then per acre. So we went with a third of a pound of turnips, a third of a pound of rapeseed, and a half of a pound of radish to get what I'm saying is a pound of total brassica.
Okay. We should note that you're probably about what, 40 miles south of I-80, which gives people a little bit of an idea since I-80 runs across the whole Corn Belt. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. What do you find is your survival rate of annual ryegrass in your area? Whether it's in the mixes or whether you're using it in a smaller type of mix or flying it in. What do you typically find is your survival rate?
On our own farm here, um, I've never seen a failure. I've always seen annual ryegrass. I'm kind of in charge of a group of 100,000 acres of cover crops now, and we do see some problems. The one thing that I'm seeing that is probably the biggest issue currently is residual chemicals. We can fly on or drill or seed however the same seed, the same rate, the same day, and get two different results on neighboring farms. So whether it be soil health that we're in the system longer, or those residual chemicals, or a combination thereof, that seems to be more of a limiting factor than anything that we're up against right now.
Okay. When you're working with these cocktails, are you, to what degree have you been able to measure how much you can reduce your nitrogen rate? What are you finding that's happening with your applied nitrogen by using these different mixes?
Well, and of course, with spending $54 an acre, that was instantly where my dad said, we have to cut to pay for those, and we have. One thing I always hate to do is tell someone how much. We have gradually decreased not only nitrogen, but other fertilizers as well. We're holding them on the farm. We are producing some, and we are unlocking some with species like buckwheat, with sunflowers, things like that, that just make them more available to us.
Okay.
But overall, we have decreased our nitrogen rates, and I actually think we have some room to go down farther yet.
Okay. And then what is your fertility program, or particularly nitrogen, as far as what you're purchasing? What are you using, and different times are you using like manure at all, or and how what type of nitrogen are you using?
We we went away from anhydrous ammonia. We've done that about 10 years ago on a lot of our acres. We've been 5 years on everything away from that. So we went to liquid for the kind of benefits of that, 28%, but also that we can mix other elements with it. Micros and things like that was part of the reason. We are using chicken litter on the wheat acres. So every third year, we're getting pelletized chicken litter before we seed this cocktail mix. Between the chicken litter, between the cocktail mix, and an early side dress application of nitrogen to get that corn by, the rest of the season, we can really back off on the amount, because once we get it to a point between what's there and what's being returned, we actually have too much left over that our next cover crop can scavenge for us.
Okay. You mentioned one of the questions about, do you use any vetch in your mixes, and I noticed you have. Can you just review where you're using vetch again? And then there's a second question: as have you ever had to deal with any volunteer vetch that came up, that seeded and that showed up, say, post emerge in soybeans? Have you ever had to deal with volunteer vetch?
Yeah, we're using vetch more and more, and the reason for that is I think that's our nitrogen producer more than any of the other legumes. Uh, we're using the Cahaba vetch in this mix just because of more of a planned winter kill. We like that it does not have that hard seed like hairy vetch, but we are using whole fields of hairy vetch. And I guess our opinion to go to that was just like annual ryegrass. We have heard to where you can't kill it or there's problems with it. We have been able to manage it on our farm. We think it's the same thing with hairy vetch. As far as having a few that come back or grow later, you know, like Gabe Brown once said when I was talking to him, it's only a weed if it's there when we don't want it. So to have a few plants of hairy vetch in a cornfield, not really a big deal to us. Then bean fields, we can take care of them. Again, and then by wheat, we are spraying all wheat acres prior to wheat so that we're helping with residual and staying away from resistance and breaking that cycle again as well.
Okay. Let's. I'm going to take one more here. How do you have you any experience planting like non-GMO sugar beets? The comment here is that deer like them. They seem to scavenge and combat compaction like radishes, but I don't know if you've ever done any work with sugar beets.
We have not. I'll say this, that they are in the ground here for the first time, so we're looking at those. But as far as before, we have not. The main reason is because do work in Michigan quite a bit, and they have sugar beets. It's the same reason that we've kind of kept soybeans out of our blends or things like that. We really don't want to create a host for pests that then are then transferred to a cash crop for someone. So I'll say we haven't messed with them at this point for that reason, but we do have some in the ground this year to take a look at.
Okay. Well, we might have gone through almost all the questions. If we've got any that we didn't get to, we're going to send them to you, Jamie. When you've got a chance, if you could just maybe do a written answer, and we'll post those with the archive.
Okay.
Before we conclude, just a heads up that when you log off today, you're going to receive a questionnaire to complete. It's very simple, a short number of questions, and that's going to help us, determine the value of today's webinar and plan for future webinars. So we'd appreciate if you just quickly answer those questions. We will be making available via email to you a replay of today's webinar in the event you'd like to go back and review the presentation or parts of it. That's also going to be up on our No-Till Farmer website shortly. We've got a complete webinar archive section where you can listen to others as well. And then, as we mentioned, any other questions we didn't get to this morning, we're going to share those back with Jamie to answer. I want to thank Jamie again. Hey, thank you for leading today's presentation. I also want to thank Saddle Butte Ag, who are the producers of BioTil cover crop seeds, for sponsoring today's webinar. And I also want to thank he's on my left side today, but he's my right-hand man, Cole Vandermouse, for guiding us through the webinar. We hope you're seeing some good progress with your crops, and we look forward to having you join us for our next No-Till Farmer webinar. But goodbye for now, and have a good rest of the week.